somewhere deep in the Budongo forest of western Uganda, where the canopy closes so thick that noon looks like dusk, a sound rose through the undergrowth that made a grown primatologist drop to her knees and press her hand against the wet earth as if the ground itself might tell her where it was coming from. It was a cry. Not the sharp alarm bark of a chimpanzee who has spotted a crowned eagle overhead, not the food grunt of a forager who has found ripe figs. This was something else entirely. A thin, ragged, continuous wail, the sound of a young primate who has called for his mother so many times that his voice has worn down to almost nothing. Day 5. The infant had been alone for 5 days. His name, given later by the research team who would spend 7 months rehabilitating him, was Kito. He weighed just over 3 kilograms. His left ear was torn at the top, a half-moon notch where thorns or teeth had caught him during a fall. And when he was finally found, his right hand was curled tight against his chest, clutching a strip of bark he had peeled from a musanga tree, holding it the way a human child holds a blanket. But that moment, the finding, comes later. The stranger who stepped out of the green darkness on that 5th morning belongs to the end of this story, not its beginning. To understand what happened to Kito, we need to go back 5 days, 3 storms, 2 encounters with death, and the longest vigil a 14-month-old chimpanzee has ever been documented, surviving alone in the Budongo. This is not one story, it is several. Each one circled the same small life from a different direction. A mother who vanished, a ranger who followed a sound he could not name, a stranger no one expected, and at the center of all of them, one infant who refused, with every breath left in his diminishing body, to be silent. The wild does not wait for the ones it has swallowed, but sometimes, against all odds, it returns them. 5 days earlier, on the morning of March 11, 2019, a field assistant named Ojok Samuel logged a routine sighting in the Budongo Forest Project database, entry 4971 for that quarter. A female chimpanzee known to researchers as Zara, estimated age 22, had been observed traveling with her youngest offspring along the ridge trail above the Sonso River. Zara was not remarkable by the standards of Budongo's 80-member Sonso community. She was mid-ranking, quiet. She avoided the volatile displays of the alpha males. But the researchers knew her for one particular quality. She carried Kito everywhere. While other mothers in the group allowed their yearlings increasing independence by 14 months, Zara kept Kito pressed against her ventral side during travel, cradled in her arm during rest, and within an arm's reach during feeding. Dr. Amara Nakamura, the Japanese Ugandan primatologist who had studied the Sonso community for 9 years, had written in her field notes that Zara exhibited what she called persistent proximal attachment.
In plain language, she would not let him go. Not for a second. Some mothers are like that. You watch them and you think, she knows something. She knows the forest takes things.
On the morning of March 11th, Zara and Kito were observed at 7,004 a.m. By 10,000 a.m., when the next scheduled observation window opened, the field assistant returned to the ridge trail and found it empty. This was not unusual. Chimpanzees range widely. A mother and infant can cover 2 kilometers in an hour through dense canopy. What was unusual was the next 48 hours. Zara did not appear at the communal fig tree where the group fed that afternoon. She was not seen the following morning. By the second evening, Dr. 8. Nakamura had flagged the absence in her tracking log and asked 2 field assistants to expand the search grid. They found Zara on the morning of March 13th. She was alone, seated at the base of an ironwood tree near a seasonal creek bed roughly 1.4 kilometers from where she had last been seen with Kito. She was not moving. She was not feeding. Her arms hung at her sides, and the ventral patch of fur where she had carried her infant for 14 months was matted flat and dark with moisture. There was no wound, no sign of a predator encounter, no blood. There was no Kito.
We searched the area around her in widening circles. We checked every hollow log, every low branch, every place an infant might have crawled or fallen. Nothing. And Zara, she just sat there. She was not calling for him. That was the part I could not understand. A chimpanzee mother who loses contact with her infant will pant-hoot, will scream, will search frantically. Zara was silent, as though she had already searched, as though she had already exhausted every sound she had.
What separated Zara from Kito remains unknown to this day. The leading hypothesis, based on broken vegetation and claw marks found on a nearby trunk, is that a leopard passed through the area in the early morning hours, triggering a panicked scatter. In the chaos, an infant clinging to a fleeing mother can lose his grip. 3 seconds of freefall, a landing in dense undergrowth, and then the mother runs because her body tells her to run, and the infant lies where he fell, too stunned or too injured to cry out before the distance between them becomes something neither of them can close. By the time Zara stopped running, Kito was gone. By the time Kito began to cry, Zara could no longer hear him. The forest had done what it does. It had taken something quickly and without explanation and offered nothing back. Kofi Asante had worked as a community wildlife ranger for the Uganda Wildlife Authority for 11 years. He was stationed at the Budongo field post, a corrugated roof structure at the forest's eastern edge, where the trees gave way to sugarcane fields, and the red laterite road that connected the villages of Nyabiyaya and Kaniyo Pabidi. Kofi was not a scientist. He had completed secondary school in Masindi and joined the UWA because his uncle had been a ranger before him, and because the forest, he once said, was the only place where his mind went quiet. He knew the trails by feel. He could identify 17 species of primate by their calls alone. And on the evening of March 13th, 2 days after Kito vanished, Kofi heard something that stopped him mid-step on the path back to the field post.
I was near the creek, the one that floods in April, and I heard... At first, I thought it was a bird, a plaintive hornbill maybe, but it did not stop. Birds call, and then they pause. This sound did not pause. It went on, and it was tired. You could hear the tiredness in it.
Let's move quietly.
Kofi noted the direction. West-southwest, deeper into the forest, past the creek and into the older growth where the ironwood trees grew so wide that 2 men could not link arms around them. He marked the GPS coordinates on his phone and radioed the field post. Then he continued walking toward the sound. He did not find the source that evening. The light failed. The canopy swallowed the last of the dusk within minutes, and Kofi, who respected the forest enough to fear it in darkness, turned back. But the next morning, March 14th, day 3 for Kito, he returned. He brought a machete, a water bottle, and a handheld radio. He did not bring food. He expected to be gone for 2 hours at most.
He was gone for 9 p.m. The sound moved, or seemed to. Kofi would fix on a direction, push through a wall of climbing ferns and pepper vines, and find himself in a clearing where the cry seemed to come from behind him. The Budongo canopy plays tricks with sound, bouncing calls off buttress roots and redirecting them through gaps in the foliage. Kofi later described it as trying to follow a voice in a cathedral where every wall is a mirror.
By the afternoon, I was angry. Not at the animal, at myself! I could hear it! I knew it was close. 100 meters, maybe less. And I could not reach it. The undergrowth was so thick, I was crawling on my hands and knees, and every time I stopped to listen, the sound came from somewhere else.
At 4 p.m., Kofi radioed the field post and requested support. The message was relayed to the Budongo research station. Dr. Nakamura received it at 4:22 p.m. and felt, she later wrote, a coldness settle in her chest.
When I heard that a ranger had been tracking a crying primate for 9 hours in the sector where Kito was lost, I knew. I did not hope. I knew. Because no adult chimpanzee cries like that. Only an infant. Only one who is alone.
That night, the first of the season's storms moved across the Budongo. Rain fell in sheets so heavy that the creek Kofi had crossed that morning became a waist-deep torrent by midnight. And somewhere in the ancient trees, a 3-kilogram infant with a torn ear and a strip of bark clutched in his fist endured his third night without his mother, without warmth, without anything except the sound of his own voice disappearing into the rain. Here is what a 14-month-old chimpanzee understands about the world. His mother is warmth. His mother is food. His mother is the rhythm of breath against which he sleeps, the heartbeat he has heard since before he was born, the arms that tighten when the branch sways. His mother is everything. Remove her, and what remains is not a forest. It is a void with teeth.
It's all right, little one.
Kito's first night alone. March 11th was likely spent in the undergrowth near where he fell. Infant chimpanzees who become separated from their mothers exhibit a predictable pattern. First, the distress call, a high, piercing wail repeated at intervals of 2 to 3 seconds, designed by millions of years of selection to be impossible for a mother to ignore. Then, when no response comes, the infant climbs. Upward is safety. Upward is where mothers go.
Kito climbed. Post-rescue examination of his hands and feet revealed abrasions consistent with repeated gripping of rough bark, the kind found on the columnar trunks of musanga trees, the fast-growing pioneer species that colonize gaps in the Budongo canopy. He had climbed at least one tree, possibly several, and from whatever height he reached, he continued to call. By the second day, his cry would have changed. Prolonged vocal distress in infant primates follows a documented trajectory. The initial calls are loud, sharp, and rhythmic. By 24 hours, the pitch drops, the intervals lengthen, the sound becomes hoarse, a rasping, effortful exhalation that carries less distance but costs more energy to produce. The infant is not choosing to be quieter. His body is simply running out. And yet Kito did not stop. Research published in 2017 by the Budongo Conservation Field Station documented that orphaned chimpanzee infants who fell silent within the first 48 hours of separation had a survival rate of less than 12%. Those who continued vocalizing, who refused, at some metabolic cost their small bodies could barely afford to go quiet, were found at nearly 3 times that rate. The cry is not a symptom of distress, it is a survival strategy. It is the only tool a 3-kilogram body has against a forest that stretches for 435 square kilometers in every direction. On the third night, the storm hit. Rainfall in the Budongo during early wet season averages 20 millimeters per hour during peak events. Kito would have been soaked within minutes. Hypothermia in infant chimpanzees begins when core body temperature drops below 35 degrees Celsius. Without the warmth of his mother's body, without the insulating press of her arms, Kito's temperature would have fallen steadily through the night. He survived it. We do not know how. Perhaps he found a hollow. Perhaps he pressed himself against a trunk where the bark held some residual warmth from the afternoon sun. Perhaps it was nothing more than the stubborn, unreasoning persistence of a body that did not yet understand. It was supposed to give up. By the 4th morning, Kito had been alone for 72 hours. He had not eaten anything of caloric significance. His hydration came from licking moisture off leaves and bark. His cry, recorded later by a remote audio trap that Dr. Nakamura had deployed in the search grid had fallen to a frequency so low it was barely distinguishable from the ambient sound of wind moving through the canopy. He was disappearing, not into the forest, into silence. And in the Budongo, silence is what comes before the end.
He was disappearing, not into the forest, into silence. And in the Budongo, silence is what comes before the end.
On the morning of March 16th, day 5, 3 search teams entered the forest from different access points. Dr. Nakamura led the northern team. Kofi led the eastern approach. A third team of field assistants entered from the south, carrying a thermal imaging camera borrowed from a conservation NGO operating in Murchison Falls.
On the morning of March 16th, day 5, 3 search teams entered the forest from different access points. Dr. Nakamura led the northern team. Kofi led the eastern approach. A third team of field assistants entered from the south, carrying a thermal imaging camera borrowed from a conservation NGO operating in Murchison Falls.
The search grid had been narrowed. Kofi's GPS readings from his 9-hour pursuit, combined with the audio trap data, placed the source of the calls within a roughly 200-meter radius centered on a depression in the forest floor where 2 seasonal streams converged. It was dense. The ground was waterlogged from the storms. Visibility under the canopy was less than 15 meters.
The search grid had been narrowed. Kofi's GPS readings from his 9-hour pursuit, combined with the audio trap data, placed the source of the calls within a roughly 200-meter radius centered on a depression in the forest floor where 2 seasonal streams converged. It was dense. The ground was waterlogged from the storms. Visibility under the canopy was less than 15 meters.
Kofi's team reached the convergence zone first at approximately 8:40 a.m. He signaled the others by radio, and then he waited, because what he saw when he pushed through the last curtain of hanging vines made him go very still.
Kofi's team reached the convergence zone first at approximately 8:04 a.m. He signaled the others by radio, and then he waited, because what he saw when he pushed through the last curtain of hanging vines made him go very still.
Kito was sitting on a low horizontal branch no more than a meter off the ground. His knees were drawn up. His right hand gripped the strip of bark. His left hand rested on the branch beside him. His mouth was open, and from it came a sound so faint it was less a cry than a vibration, the ghost of a voice that had been calling for 5 days.
Kito was sitting on a low horizontal branch no more than a meter off the ground. His knees were drawn up. His right hand gripped the strip of bark. His left hand rested on the branch beside him. His mouth was open, and from it came a sound so faint it was less a cry than a vibration. The ghost of a voice that had been calling for 5 days.
But Kito was not alone. Nay!
But Kito was not alone.
Seated on the same branch, roughly 30 centimeters to his left, was an adult female chimpanzee. She was not from the Sonso community. She bore no identification markings in the research database. She was a stranger, likely a solitary migrant, a female who had left or been expelled from a neighboring group and was ranging alone through unfamiliar territory.
Seated on the same branch, roughly 30 centimeters to his left, was an adult female chimpanzee. She was not from the Sonso community. She bore no identification markings in the research database. She was a stranger, likely a solitary migrant, a female who had left or been expelled from a neighboring group and was ranging alone through unfamiliar territory.
She was sitting with her back slightly turned to Kito, her body angled between him and the open forest beyond. One hand rested on the branch, the other hung at her side. She was not touching him, she was not grooming him. She was not nursing him, she was simply there, present, a wall of living warmth between a dying infant and everything that might still come for him.
She was sitting with her back slightly turned to Kito, her body angled between him and the open forest beyond. One hand rested on the branch, the other hung at her side. She was not touching him, she was not grooming him. She was not nursing him. She was simply there, present, a wall of living warmth between a dying infant and everything that might still come for him.
When Kofi radioed me, his voice was, "I had never heard him like that. He said, "Doctor, there is someone with him. A female. She is just sitting with him. I think she has been here for some time." And I said, "How long?"
Good. Take your time.
And he was quiet. And then he said, "I don't know, but she is thin. She is very thin."
Post-encounter analysis, based on the female's body condition and the flattened vegetation around the branch, suggested she had been present for at least 24 hours, possibly longer. She had not been observed feeding in the area. She had no infant of her own. She had no genetic relationship to Kito. DNA sampling conducted weeks later confirmed she was unrelated to any member of the Sonso community. She had heard a cry in the dark, and she had come, and she had stayed.
I have been in this forest for 11 years. I have seen mothers carry dead infants for weeks because they cannot let go. I have seen males kill the young of rival groups. I have seen things that make you believe the forest has no mercy. But that morning, that female sitting on that branch, guarding someone else's child, I thought, no, that is not instinct. That is something else. That is a choice.
The research team approached slowly. The stranger female watched them. She did not flee. She did not display aggression. She watched. And when Dr. Nakamura knelt at the base of the branch and extended her hand toward Kito, the female shifted just slightly to give her room. Then she climbed down from the branch, moved to a neighboring tree, and sat there, watching, as if waiting to be sure. Kito was lifted from the branch at 9:17 a.m. He weighed 2.8 kilograms, down from an estimated 3.2 at the time of separation. He was dehydrated. His torn ear was inflamed. The strip of bark was still in his hand, and when the field assistant tried to remove it, Kito tightened his grip and would not let go. They let him keep it. Chapter 6, The Sound That Would Not Stop. Kito spent 7 months at the Budongo research station in a rehabilitation program designed to prepare orphan chimpanzees for reintroduction. He was paired with a surrogate, a gentle older female named Bira, who had successfully fostered 2 other orphans over the previous decade. Within 48 hours, Kito was clinging to Bira's chest with the same fierce, unrelenting grip he had once reserved for Zara. He was returned to the Sonso community in October 2019. His integration was monitored daily. By February 2020, he was observed traveling independently within the group, foraging alongside juveniles twice his age, and, for the first time since his rescue, sleeping through the night without vocalizing.
Zara was observed intermittently over the following months. She did not conceive again during the study period. Field assistants noted that she spent longer periods alone than she had before, ranging at the edges of the group's territory, sometimes sitting for hours in the high branches of ironwood trees, facing west, toward the sector of the forest where she had last carried her son.
Zara was observed intermittently over the following months. She did not conceive again during the study period. Field assistants noted that she spent longer periods alone than she had before, ranging at the edges of the group's territory, sometimes sitting for hours in the high branches of ironwood trees, facing west, toward the sector of the forest where she had last carried her son.
Keep your distance. Stay low. Wait for my signal.